Roger and I proudly rolled into place the name of our new home. A friend had found an old stone mill wheel at the end of a garden and asked if we would like to buy it. He chiselled our house name into it, and we rolled it into position. Would you like to see it? Doesn't it look good? We admired it from the road. We checked it from all angles. What a sense of satisfaction. Anscombs have actually arrived in Lee. This morning, I want you to come with me to Sodom. Let us live in the home of Lot and his wife. I wonder if they felt like Roger and I did, with that same sense of self-satisfaction the day they arrived. First, let's step back and remind ourselves how Lot chose where to live. Remember, Lot and his uncle Abraham were both very rich men. They had so many cattle that their servants had been arguing about whose cattle and herds should have which grass. So they decided to split up, and Abraham gave Lot first choice of where to live. Lot looked around, and he chose the plain of Jordan. It has been described as so beautiful and fertile that to those early descendants of Adam, it was a replica of the Garden of Eden. It was a rich, well-watered area where cities were already established. The people there were so rich, they didn't need to work. They could spend their time in leisure. Now, everything that Lot owned, he owned to his connection with Abraham. Courtesy should have made him give the choice back to Abraham. But the spirit of prophecy tells us that Lot was so dazzled by the vision of worldly wealth that he could accumulate and the lifestyle that he could have, he overlooked the moral and spiritual evils he would encounter there. How little did he foresee the terrible results of his selfish choice. So before we move into Sodom with Lot, it's worth just stopping here for a moment and asking ourselves the question, how many of us, no, let's make it really personal. Are you prepared to give up what is yours by right to ensure peace? We are one family, and love and peace should be the rule of our lives. Now I would like you to open your Bibles and look at 2 verses with me. Let's start with Genesis chapter 13 and verse 12. Genesis 13 and verse 12. Okay, Abram lived in the land of Canaan, but Lot lived among the cities in the Jordan Valley, very near to Sodom. Now turn the page, Genesis 14 and verse 12. They took Lot, Abram's nephew, who was living in Sodom, and everything he owned, and they left. I know the time period between these 2 chapters may cover several years, but we notice that Lot has moved from the fertile valley outside the cities into the city of Sodom itself. This morning, our thoughts are going to be directed to the choices that Lot made over a few years and we are going to consider the choices we make on a daily basis. How also we need to think about how often we put off making decisions, even when we can see quite clearly by events in our lives that we do need to make a change and do something. When Lot moved into Sodom, he was already a very wealthy man. He probably chose a lovely house in one of the better areas so his daughters could mix with the right people. So, let us pick up the story here. Come with me. Picture Lot standing with his wife on their doorstep, holding their cups of cocoa, just like Roger and I did, admiring their house name and saying, "This is one of the best things we have ever done. We have really managed to find a lovely house in the nicest part of Sodom where the children can make good friends." Poor Uncle Abraham, out there in his tent in those desolate mountains. He is missing out on so much that life has to offer. The weeks and months quickly go by, and the family settled into the new city. The children joined the local school, and his wife the WI, and a coffee morning group, while Lot began trading with his neighbours and travelling around the city doing business. During those travels, he started to see and hear things that really disturbed him. He didn't always understand what he heard, but he knew from the gestures and the laughter that the locals were crude and lewd. What was worse, when he got home in the evening, he heard the same words from his lovely daughters, who were starting to pick up some of the vocabulary from their friends. When the family sat down to dinner, Lot tried to talk to them about this. They always had a ready answer. "Oh, Dad, it's very important that we mix with these people. We cannot be a good influence and tell them about the one true God if we don't make friends with them, can we?" Poor Lot. Did he make the right decision to move to Sodom? Can you picture him in your imagination, in the cool of the evening, leaning against that new house name by the front porch, thinking, "Well, the wife is happier than she has ever been. She loves the shops and the choice of goods in the market. And well, let's face it, our bank account is doing very well. So God must be blessing me here. Financially, things have never looked better. It is much nicer than travelling around after Uncle Abraham and roughing it in a tent. Perhaps things are not quite as bad as I am imagining. The children will soon settle down." Let us just pause in the story while I illustrate the point with another story, which I understand is a true one. There was a poor farmer living out in North Georgia who had 8 acres of land, and on it a decrepit farmhouse, a chicken coop and a rotting barn. There he lived with his wife and 2 sons. They kept 2 horses, a mule for ploughing the field, a cow, 6 pigs and a flock of chickens. Because money was tight and to make ends meet, late in the autumn the farmer always turned the pigs loose to forage for themselves in the local forest. During the winter, his wife and children always worried that they would not be able to catch them again. But when spring came around, the farmer went to the edge of the forest calling his pigs, and in his hands he carried some thick ears of corn. It didn't take long before the pigs smelt the corn and came running. Now the farmer was a wise man, and he didn't give them the whole corn at once. He broke off just a kernel at a time, dropping them at his feet as he slowly walked backwards towards the pig pen. When he got to the pen, he tossed in several handfuls of corn. Wow, those pigs thought they had gone to pig heaven. But while busy eating, they did not notice that the gate to the pen was shut. For the next few months, those pigs were going to be fed and fattened up, ready for slaughter. Farmers consider pigs quite intelligent animals, more so than horses and cows. If they had resisted temptation, they would have kept their freedom and, of course, their lives. Sometimes we human beings are as silly as those pigs. The devil has lots of pig pens, all different types, around us. He knows exactly which pen door to open for each one of us. And the devil throws corn to tempt us in. He never says, "I'm tempting you." No, he leads us slowly, step by step, until we are caught. It is often by that first choice or small compromise that we are caught. And that is just the situation Lot got himself into. The devil had thrown down those first few ears of corn, and Lot found them very tasty. I think that is a warning for us. When the temptation first comes, before we are even entrenched in bad habits, what should we be looking for? The first is the troubled conscience. I'm sure God spoke to Lot through his conscience, and the Holy Spirit speaks to us too. We must make sure we do not rationalize him away like Lot did. If we know our choices are bad or unwise, we must do something about them immediately. So let's ask ourselves the following questions. Does God come first in my life, or do I have more important interests? Do I sometimes put off what I know I should be doing in order to keep other people happy? I think that was the situation Lot was in. Do I do everything I can by word, look and action to show people where my allegiance lies? Let's go back to the story. Time went by. 12 years passed, and all during this time, Sodom and the surrounding cities had been paying taxes to the Assyrian king in the northeast. However, the people in Sodom decided they were not going to pay taxes anymore. That, of course, amounted to a declaration of war. You can read about it in Genesis 14. Times have not changed. You know what happens if you don't pay your taxes. You are in trouble. It was the same for Sodom, and the trouble came fast and furious. Immediately, 4 powerful kings from Mesopotamia came down to collect their money, with a bit of interest. The king of Sodom, helped by 4 of his neighbours, tried to protect themselves, but they were quickly outmanoeuvred, and the army of Sodom either fell into some of the many pitch pits which surrounded the area, surrendered, or escaped the mountains. The city of Sodom was totally plundered, with the Assyrian kings taking whatever they wanted. Lot and his family were taken prisoner, and all his wealth was confiscated. Oh dear. What do you think Lot was thinking at this time? Was he still envying his uncle Abraham out there in the mountains? Did Lot still still think Sodom was a good place to live? However, God was still watching over Lot and protecting him. One of his servants escaped and managed to travel the 40 miles to Abraham to tell him the whole sorry tale. Quickly, Uncle Abraham came to the rescue. He had 318 servants, and some of the local chieftains helped him, and chased the army, who had already taken Lot 150 miles. That's a long way without a vehicle, isn't it? Now, you would have thought that was a very unequal fight. Abraham's servants against the mighty Assyrians. But what Abraham lacked in manpower, he gained by having God on his side. So, superior strategy and great faith won the day. So, here is another opportunity for you to put yourself into the Bible story. How does your family react when it is in trouble? Do they help? Or do they look the other way? How does that make you feel? Now, let's really personalise it. How do you react when a member of your family is in trouble? You may like to think about your blood family or your church family. Is your reaction to both the same or different? Are you willing to put yourself out a little or a lot? You probably know the next part of the story very well, and this one incident could make an entire message just on its own. When Abraham returned from the battle, he gave thanks to God and paid his tithe to Melchizedek. Interestingly, Abraham took no payment from the king of Sodom, nor did he enter into any kind of relationship, either personal or business, with the people of Sodom. Never once did Abraham do anything that would take any glory and praise away from God and allow people to attribute his success to his own efforts. It may be wise for us to just think about the following question for our own lives. How do we select and reject the people we deal with on a daily basis? Is it on what they can provide us with? And who do we give the praise to for what we achieve in our life? It's really well worth continuing reading chapter 14 this week, and you may like to notice there is no mention of Lot and his family. Did they say thank you to Uncle Abraham? Did they repay him for his effort? Did they even discuss with this God-fearing man their future and take his advice? I don't know, but there is certainly no record of it. By now, you would have thought that Lot had really serious doubts about living in this city. Twice now, he has had events that should have warned him that he was living a life that was rather dangerous. Lot should have realised that this very precarious moral, political and family situation he was in was very dangerous. He should get out while he could. The story of Lot and Sodom is all about choices and warnings. If only Lot had not compared himself to others and decided things were not so bad after all. If only he had owned up to the very negative influence Sodom was having upon his family, particularly his children. I think this is warning number 2. How are we going to apply this event in the story to our lives? When events happen to us, do we reevaluate our lives? Sometimes events happen in our lives, and it is always a good time to stop and take stock. Are we like Lot and do nothing but just wait for things to get better? Do we ask godly people, perhaps someone like Uncle Abraham, for good counsel? Do we take time for thinking while praying, God, show me what you want me to do or where you want me to go? Or do we just hunker down, stay put, wait until things blow over? Lot obviously hunkered down. He was not going anywhere. It seems from the story that life settled down again in Sodom, and it is not long before we read that his daughters were entering into the social life of Sodom real big time. Some of them married and moved in with their sodomite husbands. I wonder what was going on in Lot's head now. He knew that God had promised his uncle that he would be the leader of a great nation and that his seed would be holy. Uncle Abraham still had no children. Did Lot wonder if his children would be the line that would inherit? Did he wonder if God would choose those who had intermarried with Sodomites to be his chosen generation? Lot, in the cool of the evening, still went out into his porch and leant against that house sign. What should he do? He himself remained true to God. He did not take part in any of the sins of the Sodomites. His wife was happy. She kept telling him, don't worry about our daughters. They've chosen nice young men from good homes, the best of what is available in Sodom. So Lot thought, oh well, let's leave off making a decision now. It would be silly to ruin such a pleasant existence when all the family are settled and doing so well. Like the frog in our story, things are getting hotter around this family in Sodom. I think Lot had just had another warning. So what can we learn from it? Do you compare your life to Jesus or those around you? Lot was comparing his family to the Sodomites, so thought they were not so bad. Do the choices you make have a negative effect upon your spiritual life? Check the choices you make daily. Can you honestly say the TV programs you choose to watch, the computer games you play, or the books you read help you to become more Christ-like? Are they developing the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace? Be careful. We may be like Lot and find those little choices have taken us a long way from God, and we have given our allegiance to Satan. As a child, I learnt a poem. I'll share it with you. To every man there openeth a way, and a ways and a way, and the high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low. And in between on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low, and every man decideth the way his soul should go. I liked that poem. Did you notice the word decideth? It's a conscious decision, a real choice we make as to our future direction. Where does the story go from here? Let us move to the grand finale, to that final night in Sodom. It's found in chapter 19 of Genesis. It was no different to any other night in Sodom. In the cool of the evening, Lot was out and about when he saw two strangers. Now, Lot was well-mannered. He had, after all, been taught by his uncle Abraham. So he immediately invited the two strangers home, telling them that things can get a little bit rude and uncomfortable in Sodom at night, particularly for strangers. Lot is still trying to be a good influence within Sodom and live as he has been taught by his uncle Abraham. Turn with me to 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 7. 2 Peter 2 and verse 7. And again, I'm going to read from New Century. It says this: "But he saved Lot from those cities. Lot, a good man, was troubled because of the filthy lives of evil people." The New King James Version uses the term righteous Lot. Despite all that had happened, Lot still worshipped the true God, though his faith and trust had grown weak. There is an interesting sentence in the Spirit of Prophecy which is worth sharing with you. It says, "Many households, in closing their doors against a stranger, have shut out God's messenger, who would have brought a blessing and hope and peace." Another question. Are we as friendly and hospitable to others as we should be? I don't know if you have ever thought about it, but it is very interesting to compare the difference between the visitors Abraham received in chapter 18 and how they were treated, and how Lot's family treated their visitors in chapter 19. Note this: for Abraham, a visitor was a family affair. Sarah baked the bread, Abraham organised the meat. Now it would appear that Lot managed the meal on his own. Where were his family? Out on the town? Had the family unit broken down? Then, of course, during the meal, we have that final act of lawlessness. The neighbours demanding the young men for their fun, and eventually Lot agreeing to send out his two young daughters so that the visitors could be left alone. Oh dear. Events are really catching up with Lot. All those times when he was a little bit worried, he had failed to do anything decisive. He had failed to make the right choice. He had put his family's moral and spiritual welfare at great risk by moving to Sodom in the first place. He had risked the life of Uncle Abraham in rescuing him from the Assyrians. He then put his family back at risk when he went back to live in Sodom, allowing his children to intermarry with the Sodomites. Now his two youngest daughters are going to suffer at the hands of a mob. Poor Lot. 12 years of indecisive action were now being paid for. Fortunately, the two visitors were not indecisive. They pulled Lot into the house, shut the door, and struck the Sodomites with blindness. They made it very clear that Lot was to take his family out and get out of Sodom now. Quickly, Lot went to visit his son-in-laws. We don't know how many married daughters he had, but the response Lot got was laughter and ridicule. How sad he must have felt. His daughters were not interested in what he had to say. His influence over them was nil. Was this because he had not set them a good example, but sat on the fence on many issues himself? If only we had lots of time, we could spend some time putting ourselves into this bit of the story, and it could be a whole study on its own. But remember, when Abraham rescued Lot, he was able to negotiate and influence his allies because he was a good example and highly respected in his community. Lot was not able to influence his family. What about us? Do we send out mixed messages by our lifestyle? How effective is our witness? The angels had told Lot he must leave immediately, but his faith has grown weak. He lingered, dallied and delayed, struggling to leave his family and his possessions. What a sleepless night Lot must have had. Can you imagine it? Go on, put yourself in his bed, tossing and turning until the morning, when he would have to leave his daughters, his grandchildren, his house, and all his possessions to certain destruction. How would you feel if that was you? The pain and wretchedness must have been intense. Then the command comes to run. You have no more time. Did you realise the angels had to literally take him by the hand and pull him from the city and tell him to go quickly into the mountains? He still didn't go readily. Can you imagine it? What would you do? Gabriel, I'm sure you'd get hold of Miriam's hand and run as fast as you could. Vera, you'd pick up Naomi and you would run fast. But oh dear, Lot. He is a complex character. While a believer in the true God, Lot has not learnt to trust God as Abraham had. He is already in his mind starting to plan his future, not trusting that God knows best. He stops and he whines to those angel visitors. Oh, please don't send me to the mountains. I'm not very good at living in the country, all that fresh air. I've never really liked it. Please, can I go to the little town of Zoar nearby? Can you imagine arguing with God on Judgment Day? We may think that is a preposterous idea, but isn't it what we often do? We tell God what we want and what we are going to do, and just ask him to rubber stamp our desires. But would you believe it? He was not only given permission to go to Zoar, but Lot was told God would not destroy Sodom until he got there and was safe. What a God we worship! How patient he is with us and how he loves us. It's time to make a decision. We know that God loves us very much. He does not want any of us to die. We do know right from wrong, but how often do we compromise, argue back, or bargain? We must stop wanting our own way. We must stop rationalising our bad decisions and thinking what we are doing is okay. Just for a moment, think of Lot. He lost his dearly loved wife, some of his children, his son-in-laws, his grandchildren, his house and all his possessions. Lot did not stay long in Zoar. It too was very wicked. He ended up living in a cave in the mountains. All his descendants were Moabites and Ammonites, rebels against God and enemies of his own people. It will be very interesting to meet Lot in heaven. Peter records him as a righteous man, so I am presuming he will be there. I wonder if he will tell us of the very poor choices he made and how he wished his life had been different. Scripture is written for us to learn from. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. A fool learns from his own mistakes. what about us? This morning, I want to challenge you, whatever age you are, to check if you are making the right choices in your life. How you spend your time, your money, your leisure, your closest friends. As God speaks to your conscience, do you listen? Don't be like the frog in our children's story, or like Lot. Take time to reevaluate what you are doing and why you are doing it before it is too late and Judgment Day is here. God is a God of great love and compassion. We see it demonstrated in the life of Lot. But one day we will be judged and held into account. Jesus is coming soon. May God help us to make the right choices, to concentrate on getting our priorities right, to see things as God sees them, and may each one of us be accounted as righteous when he comes again.
Amen.
That is my prayer.
Amen.